Now, there are a bunch of different components to religion, but most of academia has agreed on 8 elements that are pretty core, pretty hard to get around with religion. So we are going to go through all 8 of them, and we are going to apply them to Nazism and see if there's something that sticks. So the very first is the belief in the supernatural. Now, this one is one of the most difficult to figure out because nowhere in Nazism, in the state organization or their propaganda, do they come out and say something supernatural is going to happen. But it's kind of inferred, right? There was this underlying belief that Germany was going to come together and conquer the entire world, right? We're all going to come together under the spirit of Wotan, this Germanic archetypal spirit. We're going to come together, we're going to conquer the whole world. So it's not that they were doing something that was supernatural or could have been supernatural, but it was like they were doing something that was so ambitious, that was, such a crazy long shot that it kind of had to be supernatural to expect it to happen, right? And as many people got wrapped up in this, it really, in a way, it almost could have, which is a really crazy idea. That Germany could have ruled the world, right? Especially if World War II had not gone the way it did. We just don't know. But that one's interesting. But next is the belief in the sacred. That there are some things that have immense inherent value. And this one is the blood of the people, the blood of the German people, right? Unser deutsches Volk, as Hitler would say it. And this is really the most sacred thing. One of the things they're really against, any kind of race mixing, any kind of Germans dying. We're trying to keep the race alive, increase the number of people that are us. Because ultimately, they believe that they were in an ancient battle. According to the Nazis, there was just this constant war going on between the races, and they wanted their race to win. Now, of course, that's a very limited and dangerous way of viewing the world. We know that today. But when you really think about it like that, the blood of your people is sacred. Your people are sacred. Next, we can move on to the system of rituals. And this one was pretty easy to understand. There were a whole bunch, anything that was really organized by the government, that was coming around, that was being nationalistic. So anything that was like a state-organized march, they had these military marches all the time. They were always playing this music. And then, don't even get me started on the rallies. The people at these rallies were insane. Insane. There was just such extreme fanaticism. And I would argue because, really, Nazism went beyond a political ideology. This was a religion to these people. The blood of the German Volk. It was sacred. And they came together and they just let their hearts out. It's the equivalent of what people feel when they go to church. Next, we have sinful acts. So what is something that you can do that is bad, that is, ultimately against the cause of the religion itself? Well, that is any kind of betrayal to Germany, right? The state, anything that harms the people, anything that jeopardizes the blood of the Volk. So if you marry outside of your race, or you marry a Jew, you marry an African, even other Europeans, if you were a German and you married a French lady, well, that was frowned upon because you're diluting your German blood. Your kids are going to be, less German than you. So that was a bad thing. And anything that can be construed in that way is a sin in this religion. And then we have the mode of worship. Now this one was kind of tough to figure out because typically a mode of worship is how you communicate with God. And generally it is, you pray, you meditate, maybe you talk to a priest. You do something like that. It's generally something you do alone, right? Sometimes we pray in groups or whatever, but it's really praying is something you're supposed to do by yourself, alone, at home. That's that. Or even meditation, right? If you're a Buddhist. But with the mode of worship in Nazism, it was much more of this enthusiastic, almost football team-like mentality. And they came together and they would just scream Sig Heil for hours at the top of their lungs. I mean, it was wild. And the way they did it was, so you would have like one person that was, leading whatever rally or, whatever was going on. And they would scream, Sig! And then the entire crowd would scream Hail. And it would just go, Sig Heil, Sig Heil. And it would go on for just a long time. It's a long time. And they had that whole fascist arm thing. I mean, they really had this down to a science. They knew how to make this political organization feel like a religion, give people meaning. And at any point throughout your day, if you were a Nazi living under Nazi Germany, you basically had your identity of being a Nazi reinforced all the time. And if you guys are not familiar, Sieg Heil actually translates to Hail Victory. Now, for some reason, Sieg is victory, and then they say Hail after. I don't quite understand that. I'm not a German speaker. We're German, you would think that it would be Hail Sieg, but, again, I'm not a German. Let's move on, though. And of course, there's the ideology. And this one is, it's the most obvious. This started out as a political ideology. It's political in nature. It gives you, from day one, a way of viewing the world, a way of judging events. So that one's pretty easily knocked out of the park. And then we have a place of worship. And of course, again, like some of the other examples, it's anywhere that this nationalistic frenzy could be drummed up. So stadiums, rallies, sporting events, marches, parades, anything like that where you could come together and celebrate the state, celebrate the nation, celebrate the race. So these have been the 8 elements of religion as applied to Nazism. And you can see that it goes much farther than most other political organizations, right? Because if we go back and look at some of these, and we try to think about how they would apply to something else, let's say free market capitalism, right, as just another political idea, well, it's like, that doesn't really have a belief in the supernatural. Maybe it has a belief in the sacred, but, what would be the system of rituals for the free market ideology as a religion, right? And you can go through some of these with any political ideology that you want, and not many of them can really fill out the boxes or measure up. But Nazism, I think it really does, really fit every single one of these to a T, which is kind of scary to think about. But again, this is why it was such a powerful ideology. This is why the Allies had to do so much denazification after World War II. It's really powerful stuff. When you have this meaning in your life, and this is why you're here, it's really hard to undo that.